It was in the late 1980s, early 90s that the first pioneers of sparkling wine in England had that thought that we're very good at growing underripe grapes in England, so why aren't we making sparkling wine? Why are we messing about with German varieties that never ripen properly and make fairly average wines? Underripe grapes are perfect for making sparkling wine. It's why champagne came about in the first place. There were a couple of vineyards who pioneered planting Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier. They sort of led the way and proved that it could be done. Obviously sparkling winemaking is a very long process, so it took about 10 years before everyone else sort of carefully watching them, seeing them do it and realising that actually yes, it can work. And then late 90s, early 2000s, there was a real influx of people coming into the industry planting vineyards with those classic varieties of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier. A little bit of Pinot Gris as well and some Pinot Blanc, both allowed into the blend for making quality English sparkling wine. The key thing to being in Kent, Sussex and Hampshire is the chalk. We're on the South Downs and the North Downs, which is the seam of chalk that runs through the south of England, comes up at the White Cliffs of Dover and then reappears in the Côte de Blanc in Champagne. The best vineyards are on below 100 metres and on south-facing slopes, very sheltered, and ideally without the frost risk. You can't just plant anywhere. You have to be very, very selective with where you choose to plant your vines, and there have been some very expensive mistakes made. It's incredibly challenging. We're you might call extreme viticulture. We're on the margins of viability. Pretty much any challenge, viticultural challenge that is out there comes our way at some point. Not every year, but there's always the risk. So frost in April when we're bud bursting, rain and wind at flowering in late June, early July. Summer in England can be very wet. It can be very mild and very wet, but very wet. So almost every rot, mildew, disease that the vine can suffer from, we are constantly battling those. So your vineyard management team is crucial to making sure you get a good crop. And then ripening in August, September, October. Again, the temperatures are starting to drop, the rain is almost inevitable, and you're fighting botrytis right up until the very end. And also, unusually, I think in viticulture, badgers, rabbits and deer are the bane of our life at that time of year as well. Very rarely is it baking hot for harvest in England. I think 2011 and 2016 were the only 2 years I've ever seen cellar workers wearing shorts and t-shirts. Other than that, it's thermal underwear and Wellington boots and long johns. Yeah, it's cool during harvest, definitely. It makes it easy that we can pick the grapes with a whole bunch picking into small 20-kilogram crates. If we can't process the fruit that night, there's no problem. We can just do it the next day. It's sort of fridge temperature outside, so it's absolutely perfect for picking. We have an incredibly long growing season. We bud burst at the end of April, which is not that different to Champagne, but we often harvesting anything up to 6 weeks later than them. So we have this wonderful fruit development, flavour development in the grapes, but with relatively low sugars and maintaining relatively high acid as well. It's quite a unique marker of English sparkling wine, is this wonderful fruit flavour, intensity of the fruit, yet that's combined with this often searingly or very linear acidity. At the moment we're making 3-4 million bottles of sparkling wine a year in England. We import 30+ million bottles of champagne, 140 odd million bottles of Prosecco, and not to mention the other sparkling wines from around the world. We don't have to take very much of that market share to sell everything we produce and more. There are so many people who are unaware that we're growing and making real international quality, really high quality sparkling wine just an hour outside of London. It's an amazing experience both abroad and back home. People taste your wines for the first time and that sort of look of realisation on their face that this is actually really good wine. The surprise, and then it's a great feeling, yeah, and I'm very proud to be involved. Being in the South Downs where I grew up and working with vineyards and working with wine, it's a privilege. It's a real privilege. I love my job. I never thought I'd be doing it in my home country. I often can't really believe that I am doing what I'm doing. They say when you love your job, you never work another day in your life, and that really does feel like what I'm doing.